Welcome back to another episode of Let's Build Twitter. And in today's episode, we start out by creating a brand new service to handle our JWT token creation and decoding for the rest of our application. Inside this token service, we're going to create two methods. The first one to generate a token and return it, and the second one will take the already generated token and get the username out of the subject field. This will be useful later on whenever we want to go through and figure out who actually made that request. Then we'll go into the authentication controller to set up a handler to actually log the user in and set it up to check that the user's credentials are valid and return the user object with that created token. That way the front end can store that token in local storage or inside of a cookie to be sent back with subsequent requests. As always, I'm Ethan, or an Koder, a professional technology trainer in my day job. Let's go ahead and hop straight into development. So we're getting closer. So now what we're going to need to do is create a service to actually create our tokens, and fingers crossed I'm not missing anything we have to debug, because that'll waste some time. So I'm going to go into our services, and I'm going to make a new service to create our tokens. So I'm going to say token service. It's going to say at service, and inside we need a private JWT encoder, JWT encoder to create the JWTs, and a private JWT decoder for later as well, like so. Go ahead and import and import. Cool. Now we'll say at autowired public token service, take in our JWT encoder and our JWT decoder, and then say this dot JWT decoder equals JWT decoder, and this dot JWT encoder is equal to JWT encoder, and import our autowired, and we're good. So we need a couple methods in here. We need one to go ahead and generate a token, and then we want another one to actually get the user from the token itself. So that's going to be simple enough. We're also going to want to go ahead and have a private instance of user service as well, because I want to be able to get the user out of here. So I'm also going to add that. Well, actually, no, I think I don't need this, because I think I do it inside of the controller, so I think it's fine. So let's make a private string, generate token. This is going to take in an authentication, auth. All right, we need to import authentication. This is going to be from security core. I'm fairly certain. I don't have the list of dependencies on me, but I'm sure it's that. We're going to say instant now is equal to instant dot now to get the instant currently, or the timestamp essentially. And then we're going to say string scope. So what is the scope of this user is equal to auth dot get authorities dot stream. This is all going to come from whenever we pass the information down to the user. Dot map a granted authority, get authority dot collect. Then we're going to have collectors dot joining by spaces. So go ahead and import granted authority and import collectors. So it's going to get these authorities and everything from the user service that we already gave it. Then we're going to create a JWT claim set. These are the claims or the data that's going to hold. All I'm going to put in there is just the name in the scopes. So JWT claim set dot builder. Shouldn't be too unsafe just to add the username, because anyone can find the username. So we're going to have an issuer, which is just going to be self. We're going to have issued at, which is now we're going to have subject, which is the auth.get name or the username of the person. And then claim is going to be the scope. And the scope is going to be scope, which is the authorities. Build, again, this is going to be how we can actually check to see if the user can do things later on. We're not doing any rules right now, but we might add some later. Now we're going to return JWT encoder.encode. And we're going to say JWT encoder parameters dot from claims dot get token value. And that should spit out a JWT token as long as the user passes the login. So now I'm also going to get the username from token. So this is just going to abstract the username so we can do some checks and stuff like that. It's kind of more of a utility method. Get username from token, pass in the string token, and then we'll say JWT decoded is equal to JWT decoder dot decode the token that we pass in. And JWT is probably going to come from Nimbus, or I guess OAuth, that works. And then we're going to say string username is equal to decoded dot get subject. Then we'll return the username. Of course, if it's not valid, it's either going to be null or something along those lines. And we'll deal with that as we go. So that's our token service. Now we can actually add this into our auth controller. Let's go ahead, and I'm a little bit concerned about the detail service, but hopefully everything works out okay. So we'll see what happens here, because we're going to go into our auth controller now and actually set up a login function that will go through and actually create a token for us and send it back to the front end. And then we'll also do one more auth controller or user controller that lets us verify that the user's logged in essentially, or that they're official. And that can be useful for checking a couple things or logging a user in, things like that. And I mean whenever they kind of leave and come back on the page for that. So I'm going to go back to authentication controller, and what I'll go ahead and do is I'm going to have a private final token service, and I have a private final authentication manager. The authentication manager concerns me a little bit because that's something I could have messed up, but I'll go ahead and grab the authentication manager anyway and go ahead and say add in the token service. The authentication manager. And then go ahead and auto wire these. This dot token service is equal to token service. This dot authentication manager is equal to authentication manager. All right. And now near the bottom, we'll go ahead and have an @login at post mapping /login. And then we'll say public string login. And maybe we want this to return a user. So I'm going to say application user, because that'll be useful. Application user login. And we'll have an @request body. And in my example, I just use a linked hash map. I could do a login object, but I'll just do a linked hash map. That's fine, because we're just passing string and string anyway, so it's not going to be an issue. String body. Now, turn nothing. Why are we broken? Oh, because I forgot to delete string. And then we'll say null for now. We're gonna have to pass back. We're gonna have to do something different with this. Let's actually create a new model. And I'll say class login response. In the login response, we'll have a private application user and a private string token, like that. And I'll go ahead and source and do the constructors using fields. So this will help us out a little bit. I didn't think about this whenever I first was testing this. I was just sending back the token. So do a no arg as well. Okay. We'll do getters and setters. Don't technically need to do this, but it is what it is. Source, getters and setters. If I wanted to use Lombok, I could have. I'm just lazy. And might as well add a toString just for the heck of it. And a toString. Not gonna hurt anything. Cool. So this is what we'll send back. We'll send back the user and we'll send back the token. So now we'll say that we actually want a login response. Okay. So what we'll do, and do we already have a username not found exception handler? No, we'll have to deal with that as well, but I'll deal with that later. So we'll say string username is equal to body.get username and string password is equal to body.get password, like so. And then we're going to try authentication auth equal to authentication manager to authenticate new username. Maybe I do this. Nope. Come on. Here we go. Username, password, authentication token. So this is going to take that user detail service, get the user by the username we pass in, and then also check it against the password that we give it. So username and password and authentication, and then username, password, token. So if this obviously doesn't work, it's going to throw a catch and we'll say authentication exception. We could probably actually do is have an error handler for this, but we can come back to that later. Go ahead and bring in authentication exception, probably from security core, and we'll go ahead and just return null, or maybe return new login response and pass null an empty string. Otherwise, in here, we'll say string token is equal to TokenService dot generate token with that token that we created, or that authentication token, and then it will return new login response. And what we'll do is we brought in the user service, right? No, we didn't. I think we wanted to bring in, or actually we're doing that the user controller. We don't have actual access to the user. Do we have the user repository in here? Oh, we do have the user service. So we'll just say login response. If it authenticated successfully, that means we found the username. So we can say login response, and we'll say user service dot get user by username dot get, and then we'll also pass back the token. Oh shoot, that doesn't apparently, for some reason I thought that was an optional, but it's not. So there we go. We get the user by username, pass in the token, return that back, and that should theoretically be good. Unfortunately, that's going to be it for today. If you guys enjoyed, please stick around for the next episode by hitting that subscribe button. You'll know exactly when it comes out, especially with that bell icon. If you did enjoy the content today, please sure to leave a thumbs up. If you did enjoy it, leave a thumbs down. Either way, it helps out with the algorithm all the same. And finally, if you have any suggestions or feedback for me, make sure you leave a comment down below. With that being said, I appreciate you all for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode. Peace out, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.